We screamed into space and heard the echo. Part B, Marionette. 2514, EIS 49, Europa, Jupiter. Jenny wiped her forehead as she worked. She was not used to how hot it became in some rooms, despite the walls being made of ice. She couldn't pop open a window like she did in the farmhouses on the Odyssey, the Arneal cylinder on which she grew up, because here in EIS 49 there were no windows. Jennifer Pericle was surrounded by the products of her research. Liquid-filled transparent canisters no larger than her upper arm were growing the organic parts of her latest project on their bioscaffolding. Some would become internal organs, some would be used as dermal layering, a natural-looking skin. With a few tweaks she managed to enhance its self-repair functions, and as a side effect, her creation would bleed, but only a little. On a circular table in the center of the room, lit by lighting from below and above, stood a female torso and head. One side was covered with skin while the other showed what lay beneath: electronic blue lights, fine fibers, and tubes. The skin had taken well and was living without signs of necrosis on the android chassis. Jenny was particularly proud of her creation's face that was very similar to her own. "Jenny! Visitor!" A squeaking shout echoed down the hallway to her lab, followed by the loping patter of small feet. Jenny waved at a console, and the torso on the table was covered by a cylindrical panel, hiding it by making it appear as a column with instruments blinking on its outer surface. "Jenny!" A young goblin scamp bounced onto the room, oversized ears flopping all over the place. At least someone had managed to dress the creature in some silvered thermal underwear. "Well done, Lown," she humored the green skin, who she guessed was around 6 sol cycles old. Where the goblins popped up from is anyone's guess, but the greenskins did seem more prolific around Jupiter, so it wasn't unexpected that some would be found on Europa, a moon of Jupiter. Jenny grinned at Lown in what she hoped was a friendly way. She wasn't good with kids, at least that is what Harvey told her. Jenny pulled a blue sphere the size of her thumbnail out of a drawer and handed it to Lown. "Have a sweet for your efforts." The brainless guttersnipe stuffed the drug into his mouth and made appreciative hums along with disgusting sucking noises. That sweet was laced with a drug she was experimenting with, and Jenny thought it would be a missed opportunity to waste such an easily accessible test subject. "Run along now," she shooed the goblin out, making a mental note to fix the early warning bot she had placed in the hallway. Jenny watched Lown scamper out, running straight into a uniformed individual who was bald with most strikingly blue skin. The blue man caught the young goblin and carried him tucked under his arm like a squirming handbag back into the room. Jenny pursed her lips and said, "Lieutenant Sill, you have a strange way of keeping this secret lab a secret. No one is supposed to know we are in any way connected." Jenny was not amused. She had given up her personal life to continue this research, and these meatheads were placing all that in jeopardy. "It isn't a problem," Sill said flatly as he inspected some growth canisters while Lown still struggled in his grasp. "So these are what the growth hormones are for. And here I thought androids weren't made of flesh. Where is it?" "Don't try to change the subject," Jenny scowled as she waved at a console, and the central table with its limbless android was revealed once again. Lown stopped wiggling and stared at her creation, his eyes sparkling with interest. Sill looked on indifferently. It wasn't a secret that she disliked Sill, but that was more because of what he was capable of. One's mind should be inviolate and should not be a plaything for an alien race just because they have some psionic abilities. Sill demonstrated his mind-altering ability by making Lown go limp while still being slung under his arm. "None but you will remember I was here," Sill said emotionlessly, causing a phantom itch inside her brain that she seemed to develop only when Sill was around. She wondered if it was Sill scratching around in her mind to ensure she was being loyal. She was, so there was no need to worry about it, but that didn't mean she had to like being checked. "Well, thanks for stopping by. You can rest assured the provisions you brought will be put to good use. You can tell your captain that. Now off you go," Jenny said in one breath as she tried to hurry Sill along. "There is no hurry," Sill said as he inspected the incomplete android from multiple angles. "You believe dropping the supplies directly and having your little robots pick them up without anyone's knowledge is the most efficient. I am not here to be efficient. It is as you guessed, I am here to ensure you complete your side of our bargain." "I would say we are far beyond distrusting each other," Jenny retorted, lying about her own feelings. She couldn't bring herself to ever trust Sil. While I am thankful to your superior that I was rescued from being caught in that dog kennel, that was my previous research, I did give up everything in the process. Like Harvey. She had actually liked him. Which may be why she had decided to mix his DNA along with hers in the samples she was growing for her latest project. It wasn't necessary, but she thought it fitting. It was your brilliant idea to use your own clone to fake your death, Dr. Pericle. Sil continued, showing no emotion. I am curious, do you have more clones of yourself running around somewhere? There was no point in lying to Sil. As soon as he asked, she thought about the answer, and he would see that answer in her mind. That is why she hated mind readers. They had no sense of decency. They don't run around. They are stored away safely until they are needed. There are those that would question the ethics of that, Sil began, but was cut off by laughter from Jenny. Ethics? You are a fine one to talk. Ethics has been set on fire, burnt, and now we dance on its ashes. We are breaking laws set, not only by the EIC, but also the Synthetic Consortium. Specifically their embargo on copying minds while the original lives, as one example. Making an android appear completely human is another. We are so far beyond the line of what could reasonably be called ethical, it cannot be seen with a deep space telescope. But this is only the beginning. Jenny spouted excitedly. Once we have proven the android is capable of higher functions, can be controlled, and that its power source is stable, then will come the next phase of using this new creation to fight the Echo. To beat the Echo and reclaim Earth. A lofty dream, Sil's usual flat tone seemed to mock Jenny. We shall see how far the experiment will take you. For Phase 2, we need to experiment on the Echo. Have you managed to catch some? Jenny tried to remain professional, but enthusiasm bubbled over in her tone. She would be the first to unlock the secrets of the Echo, and then she could use those secrets to enslave them or destroy them. Once the containment field has been proven to function correctly, Sil acknowledged, we shall provide you with samples. Jenny knew they would be playing with fire. One breach and an entire facility would be overrun by the Echo. It would spread its tendrils and replicate itself until everything had been converted and consumed to become part of the Echo itself. But they could still fight back. No one else wanted to take the risk to take Earth back, but she did. She had so many hypotheses on how she could potentially accomplish that. Everything seems in order, so I shall report as much. Sil nodded to Jenny and deftly turned on the spot to walk out. Could you be gentle when wiping the goblin's memory? Jenny said, I don't particularly care for him, if that was what you were going to ask. I am testing a brain mapping drug to better capture the neural pathways for duplication and backup. I don't want you tampering so much that it invalidates my results. Sil didn't reply, but merely nodded. He paused before he left, glancing at the android. What will you name it? Jenny thought for a moment. Harvey did mention a child's name once, although that didn't go anywhere. Choosing between her own personal happiness and saving the galaxy from an unstoppable invader, she had chosen the galaxy. Perhaps one day she would tell Harvey and then he would understand. For now, she would use a name he chose. Sue. 2532, EIC Jailhouse Epsilon, Mima's Orbit, Saturn. It had been surprise after surprise with Dimitri. They hadn't encountered any more inmates on their way to the observatory, and after they arrived, Amy marveled at the sight of the cratered grey moon and banded Saturn decorating the inky blackness of space. Amy remembered a little about the moon Mimas and its huge Herschel crater. Second largest natural crater on any moon in the solar system, though sadly not visible from the station. Third if the one on Ganymede was counted, though that was proven to be an artificially created one. Her head was titled all the way back to view the moon above them when she felt a tickling sensation over her body. She looked down to see the orange jumpsuit that she wore was unraveling. For a moment she thought she would be left stark naked, but then her clothes respun themselves, changing color and form. She blinked, and found she was wearing a white ball gown that extended to the floor behind her and to just above her knees in the front. Once the tickling sensation had stopped, she found herself in high heels, a very elaborate-looking dress with intricate embroidery and a far too plunging neckline, transparent white lace gloves to just above her elbows, and matching thigh-high stockings. Her foot clicked, sticking on the floor, and she almost lost her balance. Dimitri caught her and began to swing her around, leading her in a waltz under the grey moon. It was almost romantic, Amy thought, as she scrambled to keep up with the dancing. She scowled at the man who she was beginning to doubt was a man at all when she felt three minds approaching the entrance to the observatory. Amy wasn't pleased to see those three burst in, and a quick scan of their minds told her that they were all surprised. This was perfect. Her android toy had returned to her, and the two that had thrown her in a cell were ripe for revenge. Their minds were awash with chaotic thoughts and constantly changing patterns, making it difficult to read, while Dimitri spinning her around the dance floor didn't help either. Amy was relieved the others could see the Baron. It meant she wasn't entirely insane. Her own thoughts were thrown as she was suddenly dipped by Dimitri. She waved at the other three while she caught her breath from the sudden fright before she was swung to her feet again. Her gloved hand went to her chest, her fingers alighting on a glittering necklace that now hung there. She also checked her ears, which now held delicate matching earrings. While she inspected her attire, she suspected her sudden wardrobe change was all Dimitri's doing. But her exploration was suddenly interrupted by blaster fire, causing Dimitri to float like a feather to the floor with a scorch mark on his forehead. How disappointing for it to all end just like that. Then the investigator was pointing his weapon at her and muttered something about her being dangerous. What had she done to deserve that? It wasn't her fault at all. She could only freeze in the hope that he wouldn't do anything idiotic like shoot her. She glanced at the fallen Baron. Idiots, the whole lot of them. That meant she was going to die too. She didn't like that idea. Not one bit. Quickly, she had to change his mind. Then Dimitri righted himself and welcomed everyone to the party, while inmates and guards looking more than a little off color floated into the room. Even the station itself gave a grumble. What was happening? The crowd was muttering something, but since they were of no importance, Amy ignored the extras. Amy kept quiet and intently watched the main characters. Welcome. Dimitri repeated, I am so glad you could join us on this auspicious occasion. Dimitri wiped the dark mark off his forehead, leaving only unblemished pale skin. You are all in time to witness our union in mind, body, and spirit. Welcome to our wedding. What Dimitri has said crashed down on her. What? Amy exclaimed, not remembering when she had agreed to any of this, although a part of her seriously considered it as a survival strategy. She could always escape later. Dimitri stretched to his full height and snatched his top hat from the air. Yes. This is our marriage ceremony. I took the liberty of organizing a few more guests. His words brought Amy's attention to the inmates that were crawling over each other as they drifted into the observatory. She couldn't count how many there were, but they all appeared grey, and she could not detect a hint of thought from any of them. It was as if they were all floating corpses, except they were moving, especially their jerking, unfocused, bloodshot eyes. Amy even recognized one, Marcus, clawing and floating between the crowd. What a terrible end to a good night. Another quake shook the station. A shaky station meant something was very, very wrong, like a collision or an explosion. Either way, the station structure could have been compromised, which meant decompression and venting into space and death. Though none of that was happening, so the emergency doors must have deployed. Of course, she was guessing. Don't let them touch you or you will be infected too, Harvey warned the others. He seemed confident on the outside, but Amy read the pattern. He was thinking, I hope. Amy slid behind Dimitri so that the apparently immortal Baron could protect her from the crazy investigator's blast of fire. This is nuts. Gerald growled. Just like your master, Amy added mentally. So let me get this straight. Harvey said, somehow keeping an eye on Sue while addressing Dimitri, you broke a convicted felon out of jail and caused a riot in this whole place just to get married. Amy knew the investigator was stalling, trying to think of a plan. In the meanwhile, he was keeping Dimitri busy by talking. She had tried that before on Harvey and it hadn't worked, but the Baron seemed the kind to love hearing his own voice. No, 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 Dimitri answered and then thought for a moment and then said, well. Yes. And then from the saintess shall be born a new goddess that shall crush the galaxy under her feet. He looked far too happy with the idea of Amy treading on anything.
Are you aware that this station is infected with echo?
Harvey asked, gesturing at the infected around them, and that the station will be destroyed any moment now. Harvey was practically shouting at Dimitri incredulously. Amy noticed the nearly imperceptible gesture Harvey made to his canid. The fuzzball nodded back and began to circle around Dimitri slowly, without drawing attention. In response, Amy kept Dimitri between herself and the canid but stopped short. That is all part of the plan. Dimitri nodded. Since you are my esteemed guests, I, in all my benevolence, shall grant you each a single question after which you will all join the others. His nod towards the slowly approaching mass of ill inmates made his meaning clear. Amy didn't want to become a sacrifice to the pale man even if she was reborn as some kind of deity, even if there was something a little flattering about it. The thoughts from the other three were similar, at least about them not dying apart. To buy time, Amy went first. The black particles you made me release.
Is that what is causing those people to act strange?
The swarm of infected milled around the walls, leaving an open space in the middle for the talks, but they were ever so slowly making their way to surround them all.
You released the echo?
Harvey bellowed and raised his weapon at Amy once again. I knew you could not be trusted. You have doomed us all. I didn't have a choice. Amy lied reflexively to defend herself as Dimitri balled a fist, making Harvey's weapon crunch itself into a crumpled metal sphere. A sharp pain crashed through Amy's skull and she let out a groan of agony while she clutched her head again. She wished he would stop doing that, but on the other hand, the weapon was no longer pointing at her. That was my favorite gun, Harvey bemoaned his loss as he threw it aside, letting it drift away. These people here are all being changed by the echo. Upgraded, Dimitri explained to Amy, their cells are being rewritten to better serve the goddess. Not only the people, but the station itself as well. The station around them creaked as if in reply. The transformation has begun and, as you might have heard, it is unstoppable. Inevitable. Soon all shall become echo and the echo shall spread across the solar system and then the other stars as they are meant to. It is only natural that the powerful will consume the weak. And you, my dear, shall direct them all. That didn't sound like too bad a deal to Amy, but she wondered what the catch was. There was always a catch.
Who are you? What is your name?
Harvey asked, though Amy noted he was checking his dogman's progress of circling around behind Dimitri. I am Baron Nicholas Dimitri, Dimitri answered. I have grown fond of the UVR title, so I shall keep it. But more importantly, I am an ascendant, harbinger to the goddess, may she reign forever. Amy wondered if the goddess he meant was Amy herself or someone else, the boss of the echo. She thought the echo were mindless and didn't have a leader, at least that is what the stories said. My turn, Sue butted in. Toys didn't count as people, but Amy didn't object.
What is the echo's weakness?
Sue asked. Amy was more interested in learning more about what Dimitri meant by a harbinger and the ascendant, but Sue's question was begrudgingly a good one. I shall answer as promised, the Baron said, but do not believe you have tricked me. The echo can adapt to anything given enough time, and so you will not find a weapon that will kill them. The echo have already learned to survive any weapon created by humanity and have even become stronger from them. And so concludes our questions and answers. Take them. The last was an order to the crowd that immediately surged forward towards Sue and Harvey. There were so many of them, Amy thought it would take a few seconds for the infected to completely overwhelm the others with the mass of bodies alone. But then Sue's hair began to pulse with a blue light, the color ran from root to tip, making the inmates cover their eyes and hiss at the android. Many that had lunged towards the pair bounced back off a curtain of shimmering force, not unlike the protected dome Amy had created in UVR. Sue appeared as confused as everyone else at the development, but quickly recovered.
Are you sure about that?
Sue said as she held her hands out towards the nearest infected. Amy expected a laser or a rocket or lightning to shoot out, but instead nothing happened. The inmates floated closer, but those that came too close to the illumination emanating from Sue's glowing hair were repelled, either bouncing away or turning around of their own volition and tried to hurriedly get away. Eventually, the walls of the observatory were crawling with the infected, while the center was clear except for the 5. "There is nothing that the echo cannot overcome," Baron Dmitri said, completely unaffected by the android's mysterious luminous hair dye, while he touched a fingertip to Amy's nose. Was he trying to reassure her? She didn't have time to consider before Dimitri's form warped and melted and began to change into a tall pile of icky grey goo. Amy stared at him dumbfounded. He had been so handsome a few moments ago, and now she would have preferred any other form. A snake or spider or some other mythical creature. "The rest of you won't be needed. Especially not you," Dimitri's voice sounded as his head appeared on a stalk, grown the ooze his body had become. A tentacle snapped into existence from it and slapped Sue across her face, sending her flying away. Harvey went scurrying after her. With incredible speed, the crowd made space for her, and Sue struck a wall with a hefty clang. She left an indentation as well as a smattering of red around her, though the pulsating light from her hair still kept the infected away. Amy didn't want her toy broken, but grinned at the worry she read in Harvey's mind. Amy almost cackled as Harvey fussed over the android's body, crushed up against the wall. Amy knew Sue wasn't in any kind of pain, though her one leg did appear to be turned outwards at an odd angle. Harvey's thoughts were in a far greater mess as he stood over her and had no idea what to do. He could only watch as Sue began to unbutton her own shirt. Hot. Overheating. Amy was getting those distinct thoughts, likely caused by the fancy light display from her hair. Harvey's useless response to all this was to ogle the android until something finally clicked in his mind. "Permission granted," Harvey shouted over his shoulder. From the moment Sue had been struck by Dimitri and Harvey shouted those words, only a few seconds had elapsed. Amy had momentarily forgotten about Gerald that had taken up position behind the Baron. Meanwhile, Dimitri had taken that time to grow a multitude of more swaying and gross-looking curling tentacles. Gerald was no longer forgotten as he roared and began his own transformation. Fur sprouted from his entire body as his lean form grew more muscular, his shirt and pants tearing away along hidden seams built for this exact purpose. His nose elongated into a snout, and a fine black and silver fur covered his face. In his now wolf-like muzzle, his sharp teeth grew at incredible speeds. His hands and nails curled into vicious-looking claws, and it was with these claws extended, Gerald snarled and leapt towards Dimitri. The station groaned, and the crowd of echo-infected humans repeated mutterings overwhelmed Amy's will to ignore them. Between all this chaos, Amy stood frozen. Amy clutched her head again to ward off the pain that lanced through her skull. Amy knew she had messed up somewhere along the way. She was fed up and angry with the situation she found herself in, and most importantly, at herself. She had been standing around like an idiot while everyone else did what they needed to do. She had been going with the flow, doing as she was told like a good little moron. Like she was a marionette happily being manipulated by a master puppeteer. She was willingly going along where the puppeteer wanted her to go. She was dancing blindly to someone else's tune. She had even considered becoming the madman a wife for the vague promise of power. Idiotic. No more. Amy had decided. As fast as it had come, the pain was gone, leaving her with a sense of clarity. Under the full grey moon, something inside her made a connection, and she remembered. Please like and comment about what you liked or disliked in the story. Subscribe if you would like to hear more. Thank you for your support.